Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for an MP Wired for HR webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about harnessing AI in HR and navigating opportunities and challenges in 2025. I'm Katie Kretter, Marketing Manager here at MP. For those of you joining us on a webinar for the first time, MP combines cutting-edge, user-friendly HCM software with proactive white-glove customer support, recruitment process outsourcing, and HR services that keep business leaders abreast of the latest HR updates and compliance requirements. I'm thrilled to introduce your expert for today's webinar, Paul Corellis. Paul has over a decade of experience in the HR consulting space. Working with businesses of all sizes and industries, Paul leads a team of SHRM-certified HR professionals at MP. Together, they can assist clients with compliance, training, and HR guidance and support for the whole employee lifecycle. We do have a poll here that I'm going to launch that will just get us started here today and see how often you're currently using AI in your daily tasks or workflows. And as you take time to answer that, I'm just going to go over a few more housekeeping items before we get started here today. If you would like to submit a question during the program, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. And we will also be sending out the recording and presentation slides after the webinar. So thank you, and thanks for joining us today, and I'm going to hand it over to Paul.
Thanks so much, Katie. Good afternoon, everybody. A pleasure to be speaking with you once again. Just one quick other housekeeping note. Obviously, I am not an attorney. We're tackling this from an HR best practices perspective, so please don't construe anything we talk about today as legal advice. Also, this is not a sales demonstration or anything like that. We're not going to be diving deep into technicalities of AI solutions. And while I do and will speak to a couple of the service offerings that MP has, that speak to leveraging AI in the business function, especially in HR, and I wholeheartedly endorse those. There are also a couple other things that I've uncovered in my research and in talking to folks that they use that are not related to MP that I just kind of use as a reference point or as an example. This is by no means an endorsement of those, so please proceed with your own research and due diligence on those. They're just being used for example purposes. So really looking forward to today's conversation. If you hopefully you attended our webinar on this topic last year or one of our in-person sessions that we had on AI. If you haven't, definitely go to the MP website. You can get a recording of that. I've kind of used this one. There isn't really any repetition from that one in this one. We skip over all of the history of AI, how we got to where we are today. That last session, we talked about how quickly ChatGPT grew adoption. And I think getting to 100 million users in 2 months and all of that, and just kind of going over some of the concerns. And certainly some of the concerns carry over from last presentation to this one, but we're kind of building upon that last session we had. So what we're going to be covering today will be really understanding AI and its function and its purpose and its potential within HR divisions at a company. And then we'll dive into a few areas in particular: recruitment and talent acquisition, employee engagement and retention, performance management, how AI can kind of assist or be a tool or a complement to those 3 particular areas of HR. We'll then talk about compliance. As a HR professional, as I know we have many HR professionals on the webinar today live, that is of utmost concern. We're at a really interesting time. To be completely honest and transparent, it kind of feels like the wild west a little bit. Every day there's a new AI-powered solution to handle some function of a business, and it's very exciting. It's fun to try out. At the same time, regulation is still in the works. We'll talk about it a little bit. We covered it in the last presentation, but there was an executive order that was set a lot more federal government regulation on AI. With the change in the White House, that's most likely going to be rolled back pretty significantly. So this is a really tough time as an HR professional, as a decision maker at a business, to determine, if and how much to really invest in AI, both from a financial perspective, but also just a manpower and setting systems up. Because you'd hate to take the time and effort and get things loaded in there and God forbid, have some kind of data security issue, but on top of that, just have a change to the laws or the regulations, or have a court make a ruling that really causes you to no longer use that piece of software, or at least how you've been using it before. So it's a tricky time. So we'll talk about that and talk about maybe how we can dip our toe in the water, or maybe dip our foot in. I think last year we were talking about dipping our toe in. Let's maybe get up to our knees this year and take it from there. Um, and then we'll kind of look ahead. What are some future trends? What do we expect to see in 2025 as advancements continue to carry on here? And as always, as Katie mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A function within Zoom. I'll do my best to get to those as best I can. All right, so McKinsey every year for the last, boy, I want to say 6 or 7 years now, has done an AI specific survey of tons of businesses, and their findings have always been very interesting. And in their 2024 survey, they did see a pretty dramatic shift in terms of AI adoption at businesses. So the question that they asked to these businesses was, have you adopted artificial intelligence in at least one of your business functions? And over the last 3 or 4 years, that the number of businesses responding yes to that had always hovered around 50%, 49 to say 55% or so. In 2024, that jumped pretty dramatically. So while it had plateaued for the previous 4 or 5 years, in 2024, we saw that number jump to where, at least out of the businesses surveyed, 72% of those are using AI in at least one of their business functions. And an even larger jump when they asked, are you using generative AI? So for those of you unfamiliar, generative AI is your Chat GPT, your Microsoft Copilot, Google Bar, all those types of things where it's kind of prompt-based and things like that. More than half, it was only a third before in 2023, more than half now are using generative AI in some function of their business. So that might be, internal employees getting help with crafting documents and communications. It could be a Chat GPT powered chatbot that they either use internally or externally. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, again, just what we're seeing is a much more welcomed adoption of AI in the workplace overall. Of those surveyed, 75% in 2024 believe that AI will have a disruptive impact in the next 12 to 24 months. So really feeling that AI is kind of here to stay and here to grow and here to make change in how we do business. So that's the growing consensus. And again, we're seeing that number take up as well. Where there has been more increased adoption, and especially amongst finance, it's something they've been watching carefully. I'd say finance historically has been one of the more skeptical with their AI adoption. Sometimes it can be a significant financial investment. So that's something that's being tracked very closely. And we are, by and large, seeing reports where these businesses are saying they're both seeing cost savings by implementing AI, as well as increased revenue. So creating more efficiencies, more productivity, more opportunity to raise revenues. So again, there are horror stories out there. We went over several last year. We'll talk about a couple today. So it's not as glamorous as it sounds, perhaps, but companies that are using it and using it responsibly and using it wisely are seeing a benefit from it. In terms of where and how businesses are using AI, the number one area or department is in the sales and marketing function. So being used in sales and marketing in a number of ways, both for targeting demographics, examining open rates, developing content to catch eyeballs, really analyzing the data, the addressable markets, things like that. A lot of AI use at the business level is being done in the sales and marketing function. A very close second is in product development and product design. So especially in places like manufacturing and procurement, you're seeing a lot of AI being used to design services, design product, design things like that. But as an HR professional, we're obviously here to talk about HR and AI, and That's why you came today. So we'll talk about that in a second. They did also poll to see what are people's biggest concerns and hesitations for doing either adopting AI or having a more robust adoption of artificial intelligence within their companies. Number one was definitely inaccuracy. And you do see that I think that's a very valid concern. Um, Companies who just kind of let loose and eliminate human headcount and don't really have oversight over an AI function have unfortunately oftentimes found there to be inaccuracies and sometimes costly ones. Also concerns about intellectual property. Again, depending on what AI system or software you're using and what information you're sharing with it, where is that information going? There's a lot of unknowns there. So there are a lot of concerns about intellectual property and rights being protected. Then we get to cyber and data security, both, internal financial records, personnel records, client lists, client names, credit card information, all of that. Whenever you're storing personal information in something that's AI powered, there is always that concern over data security. Reputation, that's still a big one. So, in many circles, AI, artificial intelligence is still a taboo term. So, the unwritten rules, so to speak, have not quite yet been established in terms of when is it okay to use AI, when is it tacky, when is it inappropriate. If you're sending a communication to the public, maybe you're. Uh, I always think of professional athletes sending out a statement apologizing for something they did off the field. And every time I look at one of those now, I think, hey, I wonder if this was actually written by AI. How genuine is this? So there is a lot of consideration still about what impact, how transparent should we be with our utilization of AI? If we are transparent about it, how will the customers feel? Do they feel like there's less quality there? If there isn't as much human, should I be paying less for this product or service? So a lot still up in the air in terms of that piece of it. But I think that will gradually start to change as there's more adoption and people become more used to artificial intelligence and see more value to it, that should start to go away a bit. But there'll always be times when the direct human interaction is going to be more valuable than something that's computer generated. And then lastly, and certainly not least, at least from my shoes, is the compliance piece. So again, we'll talk about this at length in a few minutes, but this is going to be a real challenge in the years to come, especially with the federal government deregulating and allowing for more to happen. It's going to create some tricky paradigms for businesses, to make sure they're staying up to date as more and more states adopt their own rules, staying compliant from state to state, and then also from agency to agency. So, we're starting to see the first court cases and the first agency cases go on in terms of determining if something having to do with AI is in violation of a regulation or a law. So it's going to be really important for businesses to stay up on top of that, see what precedent is being set, and see how they should proceed from a best practice perspective. All right, so as I mentioned, we're here to talk about human resources and how to leverage AI within the HR function. That same McKinsey survey that I referenced before that mentioned product design and sales and marketing as being the number one users of AI. HR was pretty far down that list. Of the companies that have adopted AI into one or more of their business functions, only 12% of those are using it within HR. That being said, there is growing optimism of the potential of AI in HR amongst HR professionals. So a couple of different surveys of HR leaders, one by Gartner, 76% of those HR leaders feel that AI adoption is crucial within the next 1 to 2 years. And the Society for Human Resources Management, or SHRM, had more than half of HR professionals optimistic about the impact of AI. So I think you're definitely seeing that number turn a corner, where there was a lot more pessimism before, and that's starting to turn into optimism now as they kind of see how it's more of a complement than a replacement for human workers and especially talented folks. All right, so let's dive in a little bit deeper and how can artificial intelligence help out those of you who are on the front lines and trying to get more efficiency or better results from HR. So the first is recruiting and talent acquisition. And I would say of companies that have committed or devoted some time or money into AI within their HR, recruiting and talent acquisition is definitely the most popular. There's a lot of existing softwares and programs that have been around for a little bit while now that do utilize AI and as I said, new ones cropping up all the time. So where AI has its really strongest strength, at least in its current iteration, is its ability to deal with extremely large data sets, huge volumes of information, and really kind of drill that down quickly and summarize it or pick things out, recognize patterns, so on and so forth. I was just listening to a program last night in terms of AI's use in healthcare and how it can just examine test results and reports and charts of hundreds, if not millions of patients in a really, really quick amount of time and start to develop some patterns there or trends. So the same logic goes when it comes to the recruiting process. So especially right now with the job market, we're finding there are a ton of job seekers out there. So anytime a worthwhile position is posted, you're seeing dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of applicants. And that can be really daunting for someone, serving in a recruiting role. So there are some really great AI tools now that can sift through applications, sift through resumes. If you have hard and fast requirements for a given position, these AI tools can automatically eliminate anyone who's not going to meet the minimum requirements for a job. It can communicate to those folks to let them know that and kind of get that function off of your recruiting team's plate. It can also rank candidates. So MP and iSolved have what's called Attract and Hire, which is an AI-powered recruiting tool and applicant tracking system. Um, those systems are great in terms of weeding out non-qualified folks, really letting you know who, based on what the information that they have is, would be the best fit for a given role as well, and kind of rank those candidates so you can prioritize phone screens and interviews. There's been a lot of concern, especially on the recruiting side, and as you're seeing laws being discussed and court cases being heard, the vast majority of those concerns about bias really have to do with recruiting. But on the flip side of that, and it's a genuine concern, you do need to make sure if you're utilizing an AI-powered recruiting tool that it's been properly tested and you feel confident that it's not biased. But on the flip side, it can help eliminate some of our natural human biases as well. So it can be a great tool to anonymize candidates and not be judging candidates based on their age or sex or race or name, or ethnic sounding name, things like that. So it can be a great tool to help eliminate bias, provided it doesn't have inherent bias within its code. We're also starting to see AI used not only as kind of reactive recruiting tool to sift through candidates that are coming in, but also combing social media, serving in a proactive recruiting sense as well. So I know, like LinkedIn Recruiter has some AI powered tools that can go through its database and based on your job posting and the ideal profile for your ideal candidate can find some potential matches for you and some of those passive candidates that can be difficult to find. You can also use artificial intelligence to analyze the job postings that you use. How effective are they? Are they really going to attract the right kind of candidate that you're looking for? Do you have language in there that could be considered biased or discriminatory? There is a program called Text.io, and again, can't speak for that company specifically, but I know they do have tools around that can analyze job postings and let you know if you may have some potential compliance concerns. And then once you kind of get into the stages and the phone screens and things like that, there are also tools that can analyze your candidates based on the metrics that you set and how they respond. If you do a pre-employment test or anything like that, it can help rank your candidates based on their response to those questions. Some other kind of next level things that we're starting to see emerging within the recruiting field when it comes to AI, chatbots. So Chatbots are a great way, especially if you're dealing with a large talent pool that might be in different time zones, or you just have a overworked recruiting function that can't necessarily be responding as quickly as you'd like to email questions and things like that. We are starting to see some companies utilize chatbots as a 24/7 solution to that, where candidates can ask questions of this chatbot, and assuming that it's got loaded with the right answers, can respond and create a more interactive experience and potentially be a differentiator for you as an employer of choice when candidates are mulling over different offers and being able to get quick answers to their questions while may be waiting a long time for answers from other potential employers. Chatbots are also starting to be used in onboarding as well. So especially when you may have remote employees or again, just overworked departments that can't be sitting with a new hire for the entire first day. Companies are starting to use chatbots to some extent to start to answer some of those initial questions, review the employee handbook, so on and so forth. There are also companies that provide video interviewing. So these are generally where an AI powered model will set up a call with a prospective employee, deliver the questions to the employee, and then allow the employee to respond to those questions by video. And in all cases, the prospective employer can review those video responses. But kind of next level is we're seeing some softwares now be able to analyze those videos as well and give their artificial intelligence thoughts on the candidate as well. Things like body language, nonverbal cues, things like that, to give you another perspective on a candidate's likelihood for success. And as I said before, we're just kind of seeing many, many more AI generated communications to candidates, both rejection letters, as well as scheduling interviews, being able to access people's schedules and send potential meeting times. Also, just things to keep them up to date on the process. So again, saving some time for your humans in the recruiting role, having AI touch base with candidates, keeping them warm if the interview process is taking longer and you're afraid of them falling off. AI can be used to help keep them engaged and keep them communicated with. One quick case study I wanted to share that just kind of speaks to how I personally just view AI role within the HR function right now. So Harvard Business School did a study where they took a large group of recruiters and a large subset of applications and charged these recruiters with combing through the applications and the resumes to determine which of these candidates had the best computational skills. So they gave some of the recruiters no AI assistance. They had to do it all manually and screen the resumes and come up with their short list of the best candidates. Then there were two other groups that were given AI. And unbeknownst to them, the AI tool that they were given was identical, but half of the group given AI was told that the artificial intelligence that was given to them was very powerful, very accurate, very good. They told the other group that the AI tool they were giving them was quote unquote bad, tended to make mistakes, wasn't very thorough, was prone to errors. And what they found was, first, both groups that used AI had better results than the folks that didn't use AI. So again, definitely speaks to it being able to be a great complement to the human-led function. But they also found was that the results of the recruiters who were led to believe that they were using bad AI were better than the recruiters that were given the quote unquote good AI. And the hypothesis there, the conclusion that they felt was that when people feel like they can kind of set it and forget it and let AI do all the work, when AI is lacking oversight, the results tend to not be as good as when people are using AI for efficiencies, better productivity, time saving, automation type things, but still giving it that human touch and that human oversight. That's, at least in its current state, that's when AI is really optimized right now. So I thought that was really interesting and kind of spoke to some different approaches you can take with AI and what might be the best, at least as in terms of where we are right now, technologically speaking. All right, so in terms of employee engagement and retention, another great area to be able to leverage some AI. So First, surveys. So employee engagement surveys, I think, are a underutilized tool. They can be uh, really great step to avoid having to do very many exit interviews. You're asking many of the similar questions a lot of times, but getting some results and noticing what you're doing well, and more importantly, what you might not be doing so well, and give you some ideas for how to turn things around to avoid any unwanted turnover. So AI tools can be used for lots of different things, both from crafting the questions, what are going to be effective questions in terms of what you're looking to determine. It can help deploy the surveys and really help in terms of, giving some reassurances that these surveys are going to be anonymous. And then really, in my eyes, the most powerful aspect or capability is the ability to analyze results. So especially if you're surveying a large swath of your employees, or you have a large company, it can be really difficult sometimes to notice patterns or trends in the responses. But using AI, they can pick up on that very quickly. They can drill down based on department, division, location, other demographics of the employees, like, hey, your male employees tend to be really happy about this, but it's not resonating as much with your female employees, so on and so forth. And it can both analyze the results, give you those findings, and then again, some really well-powered tools can also give you recommendations or even word tracks on how to respond, how to follow up with the employees to let them know that you're going to be addressing various concerns that you heard in the survey results. Um, Predictive analytics is really kind of the next horizon when it comes to employee engagement and retention. MP does have a service within iSolve called Predictive People Analytics. So what that does is take a look at employee data and everything else that feeds into the iSolve system, and recognizes trends. So, hey, we're noticing that you tend to have higher levels of turnover in January, or hey, we're noticing that all of the employees that report to this manager have greater attendance issues or are scoring lower on the performance appraisals. We're noticing a trend that attendance seems to suffer on Mondays during the football season, or we're noticing certain retention risk where all of your employees who live within 10 miles of your home office have a much higher retention rate than those who live more than 10 miles away from your office. So we might want to talk about remote work options or commuter benefits. So these things can be set up to be both a dashboard that you can monitor regularly, as well as having certain triggers and warnings and alerts set out when it's noticing things that may be awry or maybe things that you're doing really well. Some other retention and engagement tools that can be AI powered: career pathing. So I think by and large, companies are moving away from your predetermined 3 career paths in an organization. That if if you're on the service side, the logical way is to start off at the entry level, move up to a team lead, then a supervisor, then a manager. In sales, it's a similar path. That companies are more dynamic than ever before. There's more opportunities at businesses. There's more functions. You can have someone who starts off entry level in sales, but really has a passion for AI, and there might be a AI leadership role at your company someday. So you never know. So it just seems very old fashioned and getting out of popularity to have set in stone career paths where that's not going to fit a swath, especially of your younger employee demographics. So the ability to use AI to create custom career pathing can be a really valuable tool. We're also seeing a lot of AI in recognition and feedback. So allowing employees to interact with one another, being able, depending on how plugged it into your system it is, recognizing achievement or great performance, and being able to alert managers and leaders of that may otherwise go unnoticed. So again, just creates a really nice feedback loop. And then in addition to the recruiting and talent acquisition, we're also seeing chatbots used within the ongoing employee experience. So kind of being a living, speaking employee handbook, so to speak, to answer any questions about policy and procedure, being a tool to help out employees who have mental health concerns in terms of getting them the right resources and alerting the right folks to any concerns they may have there, and just overall being there for the overall employee experience as well. All right, and then let's lastly talk about the performance management function. So AI is really more and more giving organizations and businesses the opportunity to take control of your performance management cycle. MP does have a product in this area called MP Share and Perform that really helps you manage overall performance. And within HR services as well, where I sit, we do a lot of work with managers and supervisors, not only helping them build a performance review that's right for them, but really working with the folks that are responsible for completing those reviews and make sure, A, that they're doing it compliantly, effectively, and in a way that's going to have an impact on the company and on the employees. But also really just kind of stress that if you're doing once a year performance reviews, like that's not enough. That is not performance management. That's going to be an arduous task for your managers and your supervisors. It's going to be an arduous task for your employees, especially if they're doing a self-review. And there's going to be a really decent chance of conflict when it comes to the presentation of these performance reviews or the performance review meetings, where there's going to be surprises. People didn't realize how things have been going. It's been a year since anyone last spoke to them about their performance, and it's just really going to set the stage for some nasty conflict. So we even before AI was a thing, we always encouraged consistent, constant feedback loop. And the AI is that it just makes it so much easier to do and takes so much of the work out of it. It just kind of creates that setting where giving managers and supervisors the tools to keep track of things on an ongoing basis, have that information communicated to the employees so that when review time comes, you've got the review oftentimes already written for you, really, where you can just kind of lean on all that year to date or however often you're doing it data and all of the findings and all of the conversations and all of the information. And then it's really just kind of spitting it into the format of your review and coming up with a grade. And some of them are even doing that grading or ranking for you. AI is also a great tool for developing smart goals with your organization, making sure that the employees are creating goals that are going to be smart, effective, measurable, also tracking the progress of those goals and sometimes sending off warnings or flags if people are falling behind on their pacing for their goals. Can also, through things like PPA, really give you some strong insights in terms of the performance based on division, function, location, or manager. Do you have a really high-performing team working under one manager or an underperforming team working under a different manager? Is that a employee problem? Is it a process problem? Or maybe it's an area of opportunity for that manager or supervisor. And again, it also really helps give you the full picture of the review period. When we're tasked to do this on our own without any technological help, our instincts are always going to be weighted towards recency bias. At least that's what I found. That we're expected to be looking at all of 2024, let's say, for an employee's performance, but if something really significant happened in the fourth quarter, much of the review is going to be based on that fourth quarter, and we're oftentimes going to forget about all the work, whether good or bad, that was done in the previous 3 quarters. So having that AI tool and those reminders and those databases are really going to help you give a much more well-rounded appraisal of an employee's performance. All right, so let's talk about compliance considerations, because this is really, really important. We've talked about all the good that AI can do, but we do need to be careful with it because there are plenty of potential pitfalls with it as well. So at a federal level, again, we're really kind of entering the great unknown here. So back last year, President Biden issued an AI-specific executive order, put it into motion. We're starting to see some agencies respond to it. It was really requiring each and every federal agency to game plan regarding AI, how it's going to be used, how it can be used responsibly within that agency's function or purpose, and also require businesses to really do safety reporting to the federal government in terms of bias and other concerns or dangers that can sometimes be associated with the use of artificial intelligence. By all accounts, and any expert you talk to, the wide belief is that the Trump administration is going to essentially throw out much if not all of that executive order, and kind of start fresh in terms of their approach to artificial intelligence. President Trump, or President-elect Trump, has named what's called an AI czar. I believe this person's also going to be in charge of cryptocurrency. It's not a official cabinet position, so it's going to kind of circumvent the nomination process like is going on right now as we speak in Washington. So this person will just assume this role. The person who has been named the incoming AI czar is going to be David Sacks. So David Sacks was the co-founder of PayPal. He's got a lot of technology experience. Based on his track record, the belief is going to be that they're really going to encourage use of AI, furthering the AI technology. There'll be a lot more rapid development of AI, and it'll be encouraged at the federal government level. And also government itself will be encouraged to use more AI. So, in functions like the IRS and Department of Homeland Security, it's going to be encouraged that they utilize AI tools within the federal government as well. So when it comes to this is no different than other employment laws and things that we talk about when we do our legislative updates twice a year here at MP. What happens, and one mistake that sometimes businesses can make is when they see things at the federal level or they're following the national news, they see things like this and they say, okay, the federal government is going to essentially, deregulate artificial intelligence. Businesses at the federal level will be able to kind of do what they want. There won't be too much red tape. There won't be too many potholes for me to step in here. But that can sometimes be a big mistake, because what happens is more and more states, in response to federal deregulation, again, whether it's AI or wage and hour rules, sick leave, family leave, what have you, they oftentimes will respond with their own state level laws. So if you have to be an employer of one of those states, or sometimes an employer in many of those states, all of a sudden you do not have your one federal law that you have to be in compliance with. You instead have this matrix of state or local laws that you now have to be mindful of and be in compliance with for all of your employees who may be sitting in seats in all these different states. So while I definitely understand the natural response to kind of be excited that there's going to be more AI, and it is exciting, we do need to keep a close eye on state and local regulations to see kind of what they do to disrupt some of this deregulation at the federal level. So in terms of current state and local laws, we've got kind of the big three right here on the screen right now. So again, no federal sweeping AI law as of now, and probably not anytime in the near future. I would guess after the midterm elections at the earliest. But we do have some significant things on the books and set to take effect in the next couple of years. So the first of which is Colorado. So Colorado is the first really at the state and statewide level to pass strict AI specific legislation. So this law was signed in May of 2024. It'll go into effect in 2026. So we really have this year to game plan and get more information. But the Colorado law is very strict. We'll talk a little bit about the European Union. This law largely mirrors aspects of the AI regulations that the European Union is putting into place. So at high level, employers are banned from using artificial intelligence to discriminate against workers. The Colorado law specifically focuses on what they call algorithmic discrimination. So when things are automated, when there are certain patterns, or it's asked to eliminate certain things or look at things a certain way, that's going to be found to be discriminatory. So obviously a lot of responsibility on this falls to developers, but if as an employer you choose to use an AI software, you are responsible as well. It's not just the developer, and they've made that very clear. So some things that employers are going to have to do, developers have their own list of to-dos to be in compliance with this, and we're seeing it with court cases that I'll talk about in a second, they are not allowing ignorance as a passable offense for businesses. Just because they don't own the software and didn't write the software, if they're using it, you're responsible for its outcomes. So businesses are going to need to have an AI specific risk management policy and program to let the state government know how they will handle any suspected wrongdoing under this AI law. They're also going to have to do regular impact assessments if they're using AI to talk about what impacts the use of AI had on the business and that it wasn't biased or discriminatory. They're also going to have to be notifications and disclaimers to employees and prospective employees regarding the use of AI within the employment function. So again, more on this to come. There'll be more guidance. We'll be talking a lot about it in 2025 and helping prepare employers who are either have offices in Colorado, or even if you have a remote employee in Colorado, you're likely going to be subject to this. So more on that to come soon. Not long after, following in the footsteps of Colorado, we had Illinois pass legislation as well. So again, large level, this also prohibits discrimination via artificial intelligence in a number of areas, but namely employment. Their definition of AI is very, very broad, and they specifically wrote into the law that the use of generative AI, so again, things like ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot, when employers are using these in any capacity that could affect an employee, they are subject to this Illinois artificial intelligence law. So Illinois has promised more guidance on this. This one also takes effect in 2026. But they're basically, as of right now, saying that whenever an employer uses artificial intelligence as an employment factor, that they're going to have to notify and disclose that to the affected parties. Illinois also was one of the first that kind of had similar technological law written into place. So back in 2020, they had a video interviewing law that required prospective employees to allow or give permission to employers in Illinois to conduct a video interview, and they did not have to consent to that. And then what I call the OG, so not state level, but at city level, and one of the major cities in America, New York City, back in 2023, passed the very first in the nation, as far as I know, AI-specific law. And this law did specifically address that whole recruiting and talent acquisition function that we talked about a little bit earlier. So the way that they label those tools is they call them AEDTs, which stands for Automated Employment Decision Tools. So many of those utilize AI in some capacity. So when an employer who is either situated in New York City or is going to be hiring employees who live or work in New York City, or has a job opening that will be able to be worked in New York City, if they're using one of these AI-powered decision tools in their recruiting function, they need to have a annual independent bias audit performed on that software to determine if it has any bias to it. They also have to publish the results of that bias audit. Interestingly, it doesn't say it necessarily has to pass the bias audit. So if it is found to be biased, presumably, at least how the law is written, you can continue to use it. You just need to publish those results. And then for any applicants who are going to be subject, or employees, to an automated employment decision tool, because there are a few out there that can be used on ongoing employees as well, that those employees or candidates need to be notified. So as far as looking ahead, we definitely expect some more state level legislation to be passed in 2025. California was very close to doing so last year, but kind of at the last minute, their legislation failed. They're almost certainly going to renew that in 2025. So be surprised not to see some AI legislation in California. Connecticut also had one that failed last year that they'll probably reintroduce. A lot of experts are also saying New York is on the likely side of passing something in the new year. We also want to keep an eye on international because, most software platforms that people use are not simply domestic and used in the United States. Many of these also have an international scope. So a lot of times what's passed internationally can have impact on the software tools here in the US as well. The EU, as I said before, has been very aggressive. They have laws in place that are very similar to that Colorado law we just covered. On the other hand, China has been much more hands-off. So we'll keep an eye on those and see how things shape up internationally as well. And then from a legislative and employment law standpoint, here at MP, we're keeping a very, very close eye on this. So in the absence of federal AI legislation and regulation, the independent or the federal agencies are kind of left to interpret, given their existing rules, their existing regulations, how does AI play into those? So some of this could change with new secretaries heading up these departments, a new Secretary of Labor, so on and so forth. But we're keeping a very close eye on this. So the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, did have their first AI-related case and settlement pretty recently. So this was a tutoring company who was using an AI-powered recruiting tool, and this recruiting tool was set up to automatically reject any male applicants over the age of 60 and any female applicants over the age of 55. So somehow people kind of caught wind of this and found that no one over the age of 55 or 60 respectively was being hired at this tutoring company. They took a look under the hood of this software, which from what I've read recently was actually quite rudimentary, was not that very AI supercharged, but still technically did use artificial intelligence. And that tutoring company did settle for and had to pay out $365,000. So definitely an example being set there, but the EOC has made it very, very clear that they are looking as one of their top priority items in the fiscal year to come, that AI will be a focus point, and they're going to work very hard to ensure that employees and prospective employees are not being discriminated against by AI. As I said before, what we're seeing in some of the earlier court cases when it comes to discrimination and bias based on AI, the courts are not accepting the argument from employers that, the software developers are to blame and that they simply didn't know that this was going on. They're really putting the expectation on employers to do their due diligence and make sure that their AI tools are acting responsibly and legally. We've got some big cases that we're keeping an eye on in 2025, one over at the FTC, another in the state of California, as well as some more EEOC cases. So definitely stay tuned to MP and our webinar series and our blogs and our postings. We'll be doing another semi-annual legislative update in the summer, which I'm sure will have some AI-related content, no doubt about it. So kind of in closing, I wanted to go over an employer checklist. So whether you're just starting to delve into this or maybe thinking about it, or maybe you're already in there, just kind of a step-by-step guide, at least how I see it, in terms of how to approach adopting AI within your organization. So first, I think it's important to get into the right mindset and not set our expectations too high or get too reckless with how we're going to be implementing AI within our organization. So again, see this as a complement to your best and brightest, not a replacement. More and more when we see companies just kind of let AI go on without that oversight, we're just seeing mistakes and sometimes very costly ones transpire. So my analogy that I always use when consulting with businesses that are considering AI, or to what extent to utilize AI, I say, look at it as a extremely high potential intern, someone coming from an Ivy League school that's got the brains, very fresh knowledge set, very capable, at least on appearance, but we don't really know the inner workings of this person. We don't know if they're coming to us with any biases or discriminatory traits. We don't know how responsible they're going to be, how honest they're going to be, how ethical they're going to be. So we know they're capable, they're very smart, they can churn out a ton of work, but we really need to keep an eye on them. We don't want to hand the reins of our business over to an intern. Similarly, we do not want to hand the reins of anything critical over to artificial intelligence, at least at this time. Next, you want to kind of identify, as we're seeing businesses kind of do, that the vast majority of companies that have adopted AI have chosen it for one or maybe two business functions. So where would AI be a best fit within your culture and within your org? Start small, evaluate your AI options, and then definitely consult with HR. So in terms of bias, I am biased towards HR. I think it's an important role in any organization, but whether you have an internal HR team or you work with someone like MP from an HR consulting standpoint, definitely talk with HR about some things to think about, to consider, to be mindful of as we're delving into these AI waters. A, bias. B, transparency. How transparent are we going to be internally, externally with our use of AI? Compliance, where are we going to be using this? Do we have to be worried about any state laws or local laws? And then, as I always say, HR always has to be wearing its PR hat as well. What are the potential impacts? Is this going to be a reduction in staff? Are we not going to replace this headcount that's been sitting out there for a while? How are we going to communicate this? Is this going to be public facing information? How are they going to perceive it? So definitely the public relations piece is a big one, especially at this stage where, again, the rules haven't necessarily been written. And then when it comes to vendors, you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence. And so I've kind of come up with a list, and we will share this. We'll share a copy of the slides after the presentation today. But some of the questions you may want to consider when you're asking your AI vendors: what documents do you have that speak to your compliance with various state and local AI laws? Can we see a copy of your data security policy and protocols? What do you do with our data or information? Who owns the data that you process? How do you address bias and fairness concerns on your platform? How do you keep your solution updated? Ask for case studies, ask for references, ask about the training. So definitely the implementation, what kind of resources and training is going to be provided in implementation, and then what's going to be provided for ongoing support. So let's say someone leaves and they're replaced, or you grow and you have new hires. Are there going to be resources at this company to train your new folks on these platforms? Or if there's an update to the software, how is that training going to be deployed? Are you able to document transparency in your AI's decision making? So we see that as an emerging trend with some of these state laws that are being bantered about. Just a need for transparency and some disclosure in terms of how the decision process making works within the AI bot. And then finally, do you have a documented process to mitigate errors and failures? So again, sometimes with startups, they can have a great idea, but not fully think out or vet out all of these questions. So you want to make sure you're working with a vendor that's thinking these things through and is prepared, should any of these things be important to you. And then at the company level, definitely, I would say if you're going to start using AI, investing in AI, or even just letting your employees use AI, things like ChatGPT, create an AI policy. So you want that to cover allowable uses. What can employees use AI for? What can't they use AI for? Definitely be very clear about confidentiality, company confidential information, data. I play it very conservatively. Even if I'm using an AI system that says my information is not being spread out to the web, it's not going into the learning model, what have you, I still err on the side of caution. Do not put in client information, financial information, company or trade secrets, anything like that. You want to have a pretty strict policy that restricts what employees are entering into artificial intelligence models. And then again, disclosure. Um, do you require employees to disclose when they've used AI in some of their output? Does it need to be disclosed internally? Does it need to be disclosed externally? Are you not allowing employees to disclose that they're using AI when they're working on outward facing materials, things like that? Then want to focus on training, making sure anyone who's going to be using this or utilizing it in any way is properly trained. I always suggest starting with managers and supervisors, and hopefully they can help you train from there. Then focus on the rollout and oversight. Definitely build in some checkpoints, some spot checks, review periods. Don't just set it and forget it. Make sure you set up some time to debrief, get employee input. Anyone who's using it, really encourage their feedback, have easy to use feedback mechanisms so you're getting kind of consistent feedback on the effectiveness, any bugs, any issues, any concerns. And then kind of go back to step one. What were our goals? What were we hoping to accomplish by utilizing AI in this, respective employment function? And based on what we were expecting or what we invested in it for, has it delivered in that? All right, so it looks like we're just about at time. Certainly, see here. Should you have any questions, concerns, want to learn more about, for sure the MP AI specific tools, or just want to have a general conversation with one of our HR partners about AI capabilities or AI concerns when it comes to HR, we'd be happy to speak with you. But other than that, I'll hand things back over to Katie. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. Great session as usual. To learn more about MP HR services or to talk to Paul and his team, you can head to our website at mp-hr.com. It's on the screen right now too. Be sure to join us for our upcoming webinar next month on Real Talk with HR experts, human capital strategies for your business, where you will get to sit and chat with a panel of HR pros, and they talk about the world of HR. That's going to be one you're not going to want to miss. So to register and to see the full calendar of upcoming events, you can head over to our website. Again, it's on the screen. We will be sending out the recording of today's webinar along with the presentation slides this afternoon. Thanks for joining us and have a terrific day.